Joining us now, we have Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and Sara Carter, investigative reporter. Welcome, both of you. We also have other breaking news today, all over the place, actually. The Daily Caller saying FBI agents want Congress to issue them subpoenas so they can tell and reveal the Bureau's dirt. Another one, FBI agent that was at Michael Flynn's interrogation is ready to testify against McCabe, Strzok, and Comey. And all the hard work that Sara Carter has done in this whole process, it seems like everything that we have been reporting for over a year and a half, the good work, the sources you have had, everything is panning out at a level I don't think any of us expected. March 7th, 2017, you said there was a FISA warrant against the Trump campaign. Now we have a FISA warrant and spies, and FISA courts lied to, and a rigged investigation. Sara.
Much bigger than we ever thought, Sean. I mean, it's so unbelievable. It surpasses almost anybody's expectations when the investigations first started. I can tell you this. As far as the FBI agents, 100% right on. I've been reporting this for a long time. I've said over and over again, there were two people that interviewed Flynn. They were at the White House. We all know Peter Strzok, who's now, been shamed and is over at the Human Resources Division at the FBI and was demoted, and his texts have been out there for some time, was one of those agents. And there was another agent. Definitely, for more than a year now, the FBI sources that I have said over and over again, this source is willing to come out and talk if they're subpoenaed. Absolutely, they want to talk. They want to tell the truth about what happened, and I think that's vitally important. But as of yet, nobody has called on this FBI agent to do so, and I find that very curious.
Well, we know that. Nobody's ever heard from the FISA judges either, Sara. And
that's right.
My life experience teaches me that if you go before a judge, you better say, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Because if you don't, those judges are going to get pissed off pretty quickly.
Well, you got to think about it. I mean, there were 4 FISA applications that were taken out on Carter Page. Each one renewed 90 days. By law, has to be renewed. And it appears, based just on the Russia report, we don't even have all of the evidence yet. Because remember, they've only been able to see it, and only a few people have actually seen those FISA applications. But there were 4 of them. And the last one was renewed by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. And that last one has to contain all the cumulative evidence that was collected in order to continue proceeding with the surveillance on Carter Page. That means everyone Carter Page was talking to was being collected in that dragnet. That means everybody that they were talking to were possibly being collected in that dragnet as well. So I think what's important here is that all of those evidentiary pieces of evidence, all of the documents that have been requested by the House Intelligence Committee, remember there was that April 24th letter that we've never seen. It's a classified letter. It was actually sent to the DOJ, and this is what the fight's been about, that all of that evidence and all of those documents need to be turned over to the committees so that they can review those documents and get the answers that they need to close this investigation out.
Let me go to Congressman Jim Jordan. On the congressional side, look, Congressman, we have co-equal branches of government. You're part of the legislative branch. The executive branch. We have oversight. We have separation of powers. It is the constitutional duty of Congress to literally protect the country with oversight powers. But yet there's been obstruction and slow walking and lying in the name of national security to redact information that's embarrassing, like Jim Comey and Peter Strzok not thinking that Michael Flynn, General Flynn, ever lied. So we know what's going on here, and I don't care about this meeting tomorrow. I don't believe them. I don't trust them. They have purposely held this information back.
Yeah, they sure have. And you said earlier, when you go in front of a judge, it's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, Your Honor, no, Your Honor. You know the other thing you have to do in a courtroom, Sean? You have to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The FBI took a dossier to the FISA court to get a warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen, and they didn't do that. They didn't do what you and I have to do in court. They didn't tell them the dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign, and they didn't tell them that Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the document, had been fired by the FBI. So when they now tell us, oh, we're going to help you tomorrow, we're going to give you the information that you as a separate equal branch of government are entitled to, I'll believe it when I see it. But you're exactly right. Their track record is not good. And the other thing you remind me of in your earlier comment, you were so right about Clapper. Clapper said yesterday the informant wasn't spying on the Trump campaign. He was looking at potential Russian interference in the election. Well, if that was the case, why didn't you alert the Trump campaign? Why didn't you tell them, oh, Russia's trying to get people in the periphery of your campaign? Why didn't you tell the Trump campaign? Why didn't you brief the nominee of the Republican Party who's running for the highest office in the land? Don't give me that baloney that we got from Clapper yesterday. That made no sense, and yet he's trying to get away with that.
Well, I think those are all really good points, and Clapper and Brennan and Sally Yates and all these deep state operatives seem to be in a big state of panic here. But the bottom line is, this is so massive, Sarah. It goes back to the unmasking scandal. And, we have all of this surveillance taking place, all of unprecedented, a 350% increase in 2016 in unmasking of American citizens without the process known as minimization. We had the leaking of raw intelligence in the case of General Flynn. We're not even talking about that part of all of this. We still haven't gotten the Inspector General's report as it relates to Hillary, and we know the evidence. There is no question anymore. She committed felonies, 18 USC 793, violating the Espionage Act with that server in a mom-and-pop bathroom closet with classified top-secret special access programming information. And then when it's subpoenaed, you don't have the right to delete 33,000 emails, acid wash your hard drive, beat the crap out of your devices so there's no trail of any of it, and then have people like Strzok and Comey literally start writing your exoneration months before you're interviewed, the key witness, and 17 other key witnesses. And then you don't get to pay for Russian lies to manipulate the American people, bought and paid for, never corroborated, and then deep state actors presented before a court, which is a violation of law, violation of FBI protocol, lying to judges to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen, a member of the Trump campaign. They didn't do it once, they did it 4 times, and they never told any judge that she paid for it.
And they lied to the American people, Sean. They lied to the American people over and over again. They lied to Congress. I mean, now, Congress is starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and those pieces of the puzzle show guilt over and over and over again. Comey came out today, and he was saying, the Trump campaign should be lucky that they had an informant in the campaign, as they like to call it, or spy, as I like to call it, somebody who was reporting back information on them. But when you look at it on its face, my question to Director Comey would be, well, why didn't you give him a defensive briefing? Just like Congressman Jordan said, if you were so concerned that somebody was going to try to penetrate the campaign, your duty and obligation to a candidate for the presidency of the United States would be to report that to them, to give them a defensive briefing and let them know, hey, we have some concerns. But it appeared that it fit perfectly into whatever they were thinking, because remember, when Trump made the announcement in March 2016, and he kind of put out the people that were involved in his, that would be working with him on foreign policy, that's when Carter Page came out, that's when George Papadopoulos was announced, and it was right after that Comey and Loretta Lynch met in that early spring. And then they met again with senior Obama officials. And right in the Russia report, they deliberated. They deliberated whether or not to give a defensive briefing, and then they chose not to. And it wasn't even a month after that all of a sudden, Fusion GPS shops around, apparently, this dossier on Trump, which was just an Oppo research, and Hillary Clinton and the DNC pick it up from there, and they decide to investigate Russia-Trump collusion. Well, you know what? I don't believe in coincidences, Sean.
Well, now we've got spies, maybe multiple spies. You've heard what Caputo had to say, and you heard what Devin Nunes had to say, that there might likely were more than one. What I'm trying to understand, what was the justification for putting spies? Where's the warrant for putting spies? The threading of the needle, the Clinton-like or Clintonista-like propaganda and statement of James Comey just doesn't fly with anybody. We have due process in this country. We have the rule of law in this country. We're supposed to have equal application under the law in this country. We do have laws against unreasonable search and seizure, and I don't believe anybody, this has never happened that anybody knows of, that the FBI exonerates one candidate from known felonies and crimes and then literally turns the power of the deep state against the other candidate. and put spies within the campaign, and also lies to FISA judges so they can get deeper into the campaign. All right, hold this thought there. We're going to come back. We'll continue more with Sara Carter. All right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show. Jim Jordan's going to join us at the bottom of the hour again. We continue with Sara Carter, investigative reporter. You know, I was reading Andy McCarthy's piece and another excellent analysis on when the FBI decided to start this investigation. And we got into this last night in terms of their timeline is really off. And what he's pointing out, what you have been telling me, and I haven't been paying close enough attention to be honest, is that late in the spring of 2016, Comey briefed principals of the National Security Council on the Carter Page information. This all started, their narrative that this started after the Clinton investigation was rigged. This is false. The timeline is off, isn't it?
It's completely off. And I think this is what, the revelation, a part of what the congressional committees have been investigating. It's about the timeline. It's about the process of these FISA applications. And this is where they're getting caught up in their lies. They tried to say it was Carter Page, it was the dossier. Then we saw the story in the New York Times that said, no, wait a minute. It wasn't about when Carter Page went in July to Moscow. It was about when George Papadopoulos had met with Ambassador Downer in England, and that's what spurred this investigation. No, all you have to do is look at their own timeline when they met, and that was in the early spring. That was after Carter Page was announced as being part of the Trump campaign. And lo and behold, it was Loretta Lynch, it was Comey, it was Andrew McCabe. He was involved in these discussions as well, along with principals of the Obama administration, the most senior leaders. That would have been Clapper, it would have been Brennan, it would have been others that were involved in those principal discussions, including Samantha Powers and others, that would have known about this. Well, at that point in time, you would say to yourself, if they were really concerned about Carter Page, who, by the way, helped the FBI put away 4 Russians. So when they believed the Russians were trying to turn him, and that was way back in 2015, they went to Carter Page, and Carter Page actually assisted the FBI.
Stay right there. Sara Carter, investigative reporter, is with us. All right, 800-941-SEAN, our toll-free telephone number. Quick break. More with investigative reporter Sara Carter, Jim Jordan.
You can't always get what you want, but you can get Sean Hannity online at Hannity.com.
Let me tell you something that I know for a fact. This informant, this person that they tried to plan into the campaign and even into the administration, if you believe Axios, he's not the only person that came at the campaign. And the FBI is not the only Obama agency that came at the campaign. I know because they came at me. And I'm looking for clearance from my attorney to reveal this to the public. This is just the beginning. And I'll tell you, when we finally find out the truth about this, Director Clapper and the rest of them are going to be wearing some orange suits. I was told by the intermediary on May 9th that they wanted to get them to me. I gave this information to the House Intelligence Committee. I gave this information to the Senate Intelligence Committee 2 weeks ago. And I gave this information to the Mueller team, and they never reached out to the intermediary to check on it.
All right, that was Michael Caputo. Remember, he was interviewed by me when he got out of the special counsel's office in his last interrogation, if you will, that took place. Remember, after that interrogation by Mueller and his merry band of witch hunters and liberal Democratic Party donors, then he went on to say as he was leaving, and we'll be watching you on TV, which is nothing but a direct threat to Michael Caputo to shut up because we're watching you. Okay, remember Judge Ellis talking about unfettered power? That's what he's talking about. Really? Is that what law enforcement is going to do because he wants to tell his story and tell the truth? This is now imploding right before their very eyes. And if you're just joining us now, 25 till the top of the hour, you have FBI agents now wanting Congress to issue them subpoenas. They want to reveal the dirt and the misdeeds of those in the higher echelons of power in the Bureau. The FBI is having a ton of other problems, too. And we're also looking at the timeline into all of this. And Andy McCarthy points out in the late spring 2016, FBI's then Director Comey briefed the principals of the National Security Council on, quote, the Carter Page information. We do not know the NSC principals attended that attended Comey's briefing about Page, but how curious that the House Intel Committee interviewed so many Obama administration officials who were on and who are knowledgeable about the NSC, and yet none of them provided a date for this meeting more precise than late spring 2016. He says, I'm not buying it. By the way, neither am I. The real Russiagate origination story begins in the early spring of 2016, long before Page went to Russia, long before the U.S. government was notified about Papadopoulos' boozy conversation with Alexander Downer, the guy that donated $25 million to the Clinton Foundation. Back in February, after the House Intel Committee chairman, Devin Nunes, put out the Republican majority's memo, known as the Nunes Memo, about FISA abuse, well, committee Democrats responded, as I point out at the time, that the memo by the ranking member Schiff let slip that the FBI had interviewed Carter Page in March of 2016. So why was the FBI interviewing Carter Page a full 4 months before Russia had committed the so-called crime that set everybody's hair on fire in the DNC email hack? Now, Page had previous connections with Russia, and the FBI was concerned that he was being recruited as a Russian agent. Why didn't they tell the Trump campaign? Why didn't they bring them into the process? But if a tangential connection to Russia by Carter Page was all it took to get Comey so concerned about Russia compromising a presidential election, why was it not a problem that Bill Clinton got a $500,000 speaking fee from Kremlin-connected sources back during the Uranium One deal? I mean, it's just such a double standard. Why was the FBI wasting their time with Carter Page when the Clinton Foundation had already gotten, over $100 million from Russian-connected money? Anyway, Sarah Carter remains with us. Investigative reporter Jim Jordan went for a vote on the House floor. He'll join us in a second. I think this timeline, it could end up being the smoking gun that makes everybody now realize that what we have been told is not true. The story about Papadopoulos, the four-way hearsay story, is not true.
Well, and it also tells us something else I think that's very important, that it appears to be that it was a conscious effort among those members of the Obama administration, including Comey and everybody else who discussed this, to allow this to continue. And if you want to say setup, it might have been a setup, because my question here is this. If they were meeting sources, and there were people overseas in London, and that was when Carter Page was at that meeting, and we have these spies approaching people in the Trump campaign, and the one spy informant had connections to the CIA and the FBI, I would have to say to myself, he wasn't just accidentally running into Carter Page. He wasn't just accidentally running into, George Papadopoulos. He was actually told to run into them and collect that information. And that makes it a big difference between a spy and an informant, if he was directed to do that. So then I would have to say to myself, well, okay, if this guy's connected to the CIA, did Brennan know about this? Was Brennan sharing sources with the FBI? How did that come about? How did they make this happen? And these are the questions that we have to be asking ourselves in the bigger scheme of things, Sean, and in this timeline.
All right, it is pretty unbelievable when you get to it. Now, the other news that broke earlier today that we haven't hit yet is Rod Rosenstein, who I hear has a really vile and vicious temper and has been lashing out at everybody, including members of the House Intelligence Committee and elsewhere. And Rod Rosenstein, who really was conflicted out of this from the get-go by recommending the firing of Comey and then signing off himself on not the first FISA application warrant, not the subsequent renewal or the second subsequent renewal, but the final subsequent renewal. And that meant that the bulk of information he signed off on, that makes him as more guilty than anybody, in my opinion, was the Hillary Clinton bought and paid for, Christopher Steele created, Russian-sourced, Russian government-sourced lies that made up the bulk of that application. He signed off on that personally. I would think that would have conflicted him out of all this, and it sounds like he is the guy that has the most to hide in all of this.
He appears to be the guy that has the most to hide in all of this, and he is. And this is the reason why the Department of Justice has been fighting tooth and nail and Christopher Wray not to expose what I believe will be found out later to be malfeasance within their department. And this is what's so incredible about this. He signs off on the final FISA. That means, well, If you want to take it flat on its face, he should know what was in that FISA. He should understand what they were doing. I mean, this was at this point in time, you have a president of the United States. 7 months in to that final FISA, President Trump was running the country. So they were actually investigating the campaign because everybody that was connected to Carter Page fell into that dragnet. And that's what I'm talking about here. So you have to ask yourself, why is Rod Rosenstein fighting so hard to not release these documents? And like you, Sean, I don't have a lot of faith that the meeting that is apparently going to happen tomorrow will reveal anything new. Probably they will be discussing these issues, but look, they've been discussing these issues back and forth, and they've threatened contempt, they've threatened subpoena, and once again, they find a way to maneuver, that is the Justice Department, finds a way to maneuver and allow these things to happen so that they're once again back in another meeting. I mean, this is the reason why Chairman Nunes didn't want to attend any more meetings with the Justice Department, out of that fear that something would happen, that they would either set them up, try to get them to leak information, but all the leaks came out of the Justice Department. That's what nobody understands here. The majority of leaks, Crossfire Hurricane, all the information relating to the supposed spy, informant, those leaks had to have come out of the FBI and Justice Department. And that's what's so important to understand here, is that none of those leaks came from anybody else but them because they were the only people who knew about it.
Let me play Jim Clapper. I mean, we know that he lied under oath, and he said, I just made a mistake. No, he lied under oath, and now he's trying to cover his tracks by saying, it was just a mistake. He made this comment just recently on fake news MSNBC, the conspiracy theory network that has been wrong the entire time. Anyway, I'm sure no one in the Obama administration knew about the FBI informant in the Trump campaign. He's lying again. Listen.
I wasn't aware of it contemporaneously, nor was I aware of the identity of any informant, nor should I have been in my position as DNI for the FBI, because for the informants for the FBI. Because one of the things that's important about this program, which is quite legitimate, is a very valuable source of information for the FBI, is confidentiality. And so if someone is going to cooperate and help the FBI, they need to know that their identity is going to be protected. So this is going to have, I think, a chilling effect on, regrettably, the identity is out there in the media. It's going to have a chilling effect on other informants who already help the FBI, and certainly make it more difficult, I think, to recruit other informants. It's deliberately shielded from political officials. So I'm sure no one in the White House, I certainly didn't know about it. It would be approved I'm sure, at a very high level within the FBI, because this is a rigorously overseen program, has definite rules, regulations, and protocols that have to be adhered to manage an informant.
There's no evidence that they ever in the history of this country put spies inside of opposition party campaigns like they did here. And where's the warrant, Mr. Clapper? I thought Alan Dershowitz had an amazing answer to this. Here's his answer.
If this had happened to Hillary Clinton, the ACLU would be jumping up and down the way they did when I was on the board of the ACLU, when undercover agents were put into the anti-war movement, into civil rights movement. All they were there was to listen, into Muslim churches. Civil libertarians are generally a little bit suspicious when undercover agents go just to ask questions, and I think we as civil libertarians ought to be suspicious of this. Allay our suspicions, and then we'll be fine.
And Sarah, I mean, the point is they purposely put these spies out there, and there was more than one.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And who leaked that information? Let's just go back to the Department of Justice in their letter. Remember when Devin Nunes was asking for this information, they were in a back and forth fight several weeks ago. They said, Nunes hasn't responded to our calls. We're set to meet with him on Friday. He said, I don't want to meet with you guys unless you're able to produce something. And what they did was they leaked a letter. They basically didn't even leak it. They made it public. The Department of Justice made their letter in response to Devin Nunes public, and that's where the one informant came up, where they said information could threaten national security and possibly endanger lives. And Chairman Nunes came right out and said, look, that isn't even what we asked for. That isn't even what we asked for. Our letter is classified. We are asking for documents. Our letter is classified. You're the one that brought up the informant. And then we get the leaks in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And Clapper's right about one thing. Those names and anything surrounding an informant or a spy for the FBI would be considered highly confidential and classified. So the only people who would have known about this person would have been the people that were handling him and the senior officials within the DOJ and the FBI. So nobody else could have leaked that information out except for them.
We'll continue our final moments with Sara Carter. Final moments, an unbelievable news day here. We'll have all of this tonight on Hannity, 9 Eastern on the Fox News Channel. Kerry Pickett in a few moments. Many agents in the FBI, they want Congress to subpoena them. They want to tell and reveal the real issues and the real, nefarious things that have been going on behind the scenes, but they can't say anything unless they're subpoenaed. All right, Sara Carter, so where are we going next? It seems like even now that this has now gone to another level from FISA abuse and rigging and fixing investigations, and now that we're seeing their timeline crumble, it appears with the FBI spies inside the Trump campaign, I see a lot of people in deep legal trouble now. Deep legal trouble is right, Sean. There's a need right now for full transparency. That means these documents need to be turned over, whether that's by the president's order or whether the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee can get the DOJ on board and agree to this, because there's no other way to get around this. There's no turning back now. There's too much out there already. People know what's going on here. The IG report is set to come out soon, and that will focus on Hillary Clinton, the FBI's handling of the server case. And I think a lot more information is going to come out in that report. And then remember, Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General for the DOJ, has another report after that, and that will deal with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants. And that's going to be very important because that'll coincide with the House Committee's investigation. There's no way they can go back on this right now. There's too much information out there. A lot of people need to see the truth, and I think that there needs to be an overhaul. And as for, Kerry Pickett's story, I think it's very important. It's the same thing that I've been hearing for more than a year now from my sources. I'm stunned and surprised that nobody has subpoenaed these FBI agents yet. Or the FISA judges. They need to talk to. All right, you deserve a Pulitzer Prize by the time this is all said and done. Amazing work that you've done. Sara Carter, thank you. We'll see you on Hannity tonight, 9 Eastern. We appreciate you being with us.